Hello there. How are you? It's good to see you again. My name's Dan. I'm going to be doing another fragrance review for you today. So, today, what we have on the menu is Gray Flannel from Geoffrey Beene. And this one, it kind of amuses me because for those of us who have spent any amount of time searching through um, discounters' websites, Fragrance Net, etc., inevitably you'll find this fragrance and you'll see the price tag is like 10 to $15, right? And that's before the discounts you can get if you load up a cart or add some kind of coupon. So it just people end up finding this fragrance and they get curious. So I figure we'll just talk about it from the perspective of a hobbyist perfumer and we'll see what we come up with. How about that? Okay. Gray flannel, Jeffrey Bean. I'm going to pull up Fragrantica first, as I often do. 3.76 stars out of 5. I'll be honest, even though I kind of like this fragrance, that's higher than I was expecting. This fragrance has some polarizing attributes. It has kind of a dark and dirty galbanum note. The cap is very low quality. There's a lot of things to dislike about this fragrance, I guess. But when you're in that price point, how can people really complain? So that's, I guess, why it's that high. But let's just jump right into it. So this is the atomizer. You can't really see it. Anyway, it's actually not a bad atomizer for a cigar. A cigar for a cologne in this price point. And boom, you get floral, you get green, you get fresh, you get kind of the notes of like a little bit of a note of petrichor or fresh rain. It's got a thickness to it, and something a little bitter or acrid in it that a lot of people won't like. And it is a slightly more mature fragrance. It's not a super youthful fragrance. There's a darkness to it, and it has low sweetness. It's not very sweet. So the thing that's kind of amusing is that this is a little bit more in line with the kinds of things that I make. I don't generally make things that are super light, super bright, super candy, sweet, all of that. I just don't. I like darker fragrances. So I remember I was reading a review once or watching a review, I can't remember, where they were talking about this fragrance and they said it's so dark, it's kind of bitter, it's disgusting, I hate it, right? Like that was basically the general consensus by this individual. And I thought, "Oh, I better check it out," which is probably a little bit of a paradox. So, it is an aromatic floral. There's definitely a thickness to it, and it has a really strong opening of galbanum. So galbanum is probably one of the polarizing notes that is turning people off because it can be a little bitter and a little acrid and a little sharp. Um, but there's also kind of like a dark and dirty oak moss note in this fragrance that it's like, even though this is obviously a synthetic fragrance, at the price point it's at, it would not be in production if it had a large amount of naturals in it. But the oak moss actually smells kind of realistic. Like I think it's dosed pretty heavily. It reminds me of this oak moss material that Robert Tett makes, which I have actually, but I didn't bring it with me today. Um, but I did bring other materials, so we'll talk about those. So right off the bat, from the perfumer's perspective, you get galbanum. That's one of the first notes that opens up. Galbanum is this kind of bitter, sharp, dry, cool, icy cool pine smelling note. It does smell vegetal, but vegetal in a specific kind of way. And gray flannel does have this kind of green vegetal note. I brought out hexanol 3 cis because this, to my nose, smells like freshly cut grass. And I actually brought this out because this fragrance does not smell like freshly cut grass, even though it has this kind of sharp, bitter green note in it. It's more so bitter in the way that galbanum, bitter and vegetal in the way that galbanum is. I also brought out a green material called Ivy Base from Firmenich. And this material theoretically could be in this fragrance. It smells kind of like what you would expect, like vines, like someone maybe cut through some of them, and those things like hexanol 3 cis, which are present in all plants. Even if you even cut a watermelon open, you're going to get hexanol 3 cis. But it's more likely to me that ivy base is used. But there is kind of a tart greenness. It could just be from the galbanum itself. It also could be from the part of the violetine MIP from Firmenich material. This material also has a tart, fresh green aspect, which I think is highly likely used in this fragrance. It's not as one to one to my nose as Burberry Touch was, but um, I do think that materials in this blend. It's just a slightly more subtle roll on this one. I'm also getting geraniol, which is this kind of airy floral material, which does smell quite a lot like geranium. That's because geranium has geraniol in it. And then I'm getting this very thick accord up the middle of aldehydes. I'm not exactly sure which ones. Probably something like isodihydrolavandulol, which is this kind of floral richness underneath here with some hazy aldehydic properties in the center. It makes the fragrance smell kind of ozonic and wet. This is probably contributing to some of the petrichor effect. Cashmeran, which in my opinion is almost without question in this fragrance. I just don't think it's dosed super, super heavily, but cashmeran adding some thickness, aldehydic fuzziness in the center. Um, Even though I don't actually know if cashmeran is an aldehydic material or not, but it has a similar property in the center of a fragrance, adding some structure. And I do think that when you look at Fragrantica, it says cedar. I don't think there's cedar in this. I think that it's more likely cashmeran and isoe soup are causing that. Um, and then there's got to be something like aldehyde C12MNA or one of these kind of fatty materials. Could be dosed lightly, but is commonly used in salt accords. But um, it adds a certain thickness and density to the aroma profile. And this fragrance does have a big, thick, dense kind of aroma. Um, and I'm not exactly sure what the cocktail of floral materials is outside of geraniol and violetine MIP. It could be any violet material. It doesn't have to be violetine MIP. But there are violet materials in this for sure. There are some iris materials in this. I'm trying to remember. I think I have an iris material from Givco that's probably in this. It's a nice affordable material. But when you're analyzing a fragrance like this, you have to assume everything is synthetic, and you have to assume that a lot of the materials are probably very affordable, which leads me to conclude that there's likely a lot of hedione in this, which adds a little bit of radiance. It's a jasmine. I want to say I'm pretty sure it's jasmine derivative, where they were able to isolate a molecule of jasmine. It's one of the most commonly used um, aroma materials in perfumery. especially in florals. It's in every single floral. If you've bought a floral fragrance, it will have hedione in it. I guarantee it. There are probably almost no exceptions to that rule. Um, so yeah, I could go on and on and on. But really, there's no need to because this is a floral, green, fresh, kind of musky fragrance with a kind of realistic, dirty oak moss note. And it has some of those kind of vintage masculine smelling musks in the base, probably stuff like muscanone. Um, if I had to guess, it would probably be muscanone. Um, and I don't think I mentioned exaltolide yet, but exaltolide is also a musk in the top note, adding thickness as well. And muscanone adds a very smooth finish. This fragrance likely has a little bit of tonalite in it, giving kind of a clean laundry smell. And I don't get a whole lot more than that. So I guess on to my final thoughts. Well, let me back up because I don't really smell any vetiver in this. It could be vetiver acetate though, adding thickness in the center. Um, and the lemon is probably actually limonene, which is typical of fragrances. So you know, I think it's a fantastic value at $10. It's a fantastic value at $13 or $15. The only problem is, I think a lot of people just won't like it. It's a little bit of a polarizing fragrance. I think it's constructed pretty well from a perfume standpoint. It's got a unique smell. You're going to stand out when you wear this. You will not smell like Dior Sauvage or, Club de Nuit Intense Man. It's going to be something totally different. It's so cheap that you might not care that you took a gamble on it. I'm going to say value is like 9.5 out of 10. It's a ridiculous value. Projection is not that great. It's maybe a 6, maybe a 5. I'm smelling it pretty good here. I'm literally like that far from my nose. I don't wear this very often, so I guess it's possible that other people will smell you pretty far, but um, there are fragrances which push, and this doesn't feel like a pusher. It feels more like a radiator, and I think that's coming from the hedione. Hedione tends to give you like a little bubble, right? And it gives you a sillage. So that means that the scent hangs in the air as you go by. Um, and so to me, this is more of a 4 or 5, even maybe even 4. It's probably a 5 in projection. But the sillage is pretty good. The radiance is pretty good. It's probably like a 6 or a 7, honestly. In terms of sillage, the scent trail you leave behind when you walk past. And that's thanks to hedione. And from there, I'm going to give performance. It's not that great. The performance is also probably in that kind of 5-ish range. There are some good raw materials which will give a little bit of fixative power. And the big oak moss note, oak moss is a good fixative. So it'll hang around for a while, but we're not planning to smell it very much after like 4 or 5 hours just because of the kinds of materials that were used and the way they were dosed. It's probably just not going to last that long. So, um, all in all, do I like it? I do like it. I'm gonna give it like a 6.5, maybe a 6. I like it. Um, it is a $10 to $13 fragrance that I like about 6 out of 10. That's pretty freaking good. The first time I smelled it, I really didn't like it, which is so funny because it's grown on me. So, this might be one you have to leave on the shelf for a while. Sometimes really, really affordable fragrances need time to macerate. They need to mix up and blend. But I like this one more the more time goes. And I have had this fragrance on my shelf for literally like 3 years. So I've had this fragrance for quite a while. And so it's just been kind of cooking for a long time. You might you might buy it and then find out you like it 3 or 4 years later. So, maybe don't throw it out. Maybe just let it sit on the shelf for a long time, and maybe it'll turn into something you kind of like. So who knows? But anyway, that's going to be it for the video. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next one. Have a good day. Bye bye.